A failed art student, a crowded beer hall, and a toxic idea that would consume the world. You think you know how Nazi ideology began? The answer isn't what you think. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you reveals how easily a nation can fall into darkness. Let's go back to 1918. Germany just lost World War I. Millions of soldiers are dead. The country is broke, and soldiers are coming home to a nation they don't even recognize anymore. Everything feels like it's falling apart. But here's what you're missing. The ideology didn't start with Hitler. It was already there, waiting in the shadows. And this is important. For decades before Hitler, some people in Europe had been spreading this idea that certain races were better than others. I'm talking about scientists in fancy universities measuring people's skulls and writing books claiming some humans were naturally superior. Wild, right? But people believed it. These weren't fringe ideas. These were things you could learn in school. So the poison? It was already in the water before Hitler ever showed up. But you need to understand something crucial. Germany wasn't uniquely evil. Britain had these ideas. France had them. America had them. So what made Germany different? What happened next? After World War I ended, the winning countries, Britain, France, America, they forced Germany to sign something called the Treaty of Versailles. Think of it like this. Imagine you got into a fight, and afterward, not only do you lose, but the other guy makes you pay for all the damage. To everyone. For everything. Even stuff that wasn't your fault. That's what happened to Germany. The treaty said Germany had to accept all the blame for the war. They had to pay insane amounts of money to the countries they fought against. We're talking billions and billions. Money Germany didn't have. They lost huge chunks of their land. They weren't allowed to have a real military anymore. And here's the kicker. This destroyed their economy. Like, completely destroyed it. You know how you work hard, save money, and feel secure? Imagine waking up one day and all that money is worthless. Your life savings? Gone. People were literally using cash as wallpaper because it was worth less than actual wallpaper. They were burning money to stay warm because it was cheaper than firewood. The middle class, doctors, teachers, business owners, wiped out overnight. Can you imagine that? Your whole life erased. And here's where it gets dark. When people are suffering like that, they want answers. They want to know why this is happening to them. And someone whispered an answer. You didn't really lose the war. You were betrayed. This became known as the stab-in-the-back myth. The idea was simple. Germany's army was still fighting strong. They could have won. But they were stabbed in the back by traitors at home, by Jewish people, by communists, by the politicians who signed the peace treaty. They called them the November criminals. Now, was any of this true? Number? Absolutely not. Germany lost because they lost. Plain and simple. But here's the thing about lies. When you're desperate, when you're humiliated, when your kids are hungry and you've lost everything, you don't want complicated truth. You want simple answers. You want someone to blame. You want villains. You're probably thinking, but surely people knew this was nonsense, right? Surely educated people saw through it. Some did. But most were too angry, too scared, too broken to think clearly. And that's when Adolf Hitler walked onto the scene. Now, let me tell you who Hitler was in 1919. He was nobody. Seriously? A guy who failed to get into art school. A low-ranking soldier from the war. Homeless for a while, no money, no connections, no real skills. If you passed him on the street, you wouldn't look twice. But he had one gift. He could talk. And when he talked, people listened. In 1919, he joined this tiny political group. They called themselves the German Workers' Party. It was basically just a few guys sitting in beer halls complaining about the government. You know those people you see at the bar who just rant about politics? That was them. Maybe 7 guys showed up to meetings. That's it. But Hitler saw something, an opportunity. Within months, he was running the show. He renamed the group the National Socialist German Workers' Party. You probably know them better as the Nazis. Now, here's what you need to understand, and this is crucial. Hitler didn't invent hatred of Jewish people. That had been around in Europe for literally 1,000 years. He didn't invent extreme nationalism, the idea that your country is better than everyone else's. That existed too. What Hitler did was take these old hatreds and package them in a new way. He gave them symbols, uniforms, flags, rituals. He made hatred look organized, official, powerful. He told broken Germans that they weren't actually broken. They were the master race. He told poor workers they deserved to rule an empire. He told them their suffering wasn't random bad luck or the consequences of war. No, it was a conspiracy, a plot by Jewish people and communists to destroy Germany from within. And listen, this is important. He wasn't just selling hate. He was selling hope. Twisted, evil hope, but hope. He promised Germans their country would be great again, that they'd have jobs, pride, respect, revenge. People ate it up. By 1920, Nazi rallies were filling massive beer halls. Thousands of people showing up to hear Hitler scream for hours. He had thugs in brown shirts beating up anyone who disagreed with him in the streets. The fringe was becoming mainstream, fast. And you're sitting there thinking, where were the good people? Where were the smart folks who should have stopped this? They were there. They were writing newspaper articles, giving speeches, pointing out the lies, telling everyone how dangerous this was. But here's the thing. Most people thought the Nazis were a joke. Educated Germans, professors, doctors, writers, they looked at Hitler and his followers and laughed. These extremists will fade away, they said. Germans are too smart for this, too civilized. We're the land of Beethoven and Einstein. We won't fall for obvious lies. They were so wrong. The ideology grew because it gave people what they desperately needed. It gave meaning to their suffering. It gave them enemies they could see and fight. It promised them their glory would return. And it was simple. You didn't need a PhD to understand it. You just needed to know who to hate and who to follow. Think about that for a second. Germany had some of the best universities in the world. They gave us incredible music, literature, science. And yet, they embraced an ideology built on pure hatred. How? Because people were desperate. Because they wanted easy answers to hard questions. Because someone told them, you're not the problem, you're the victim. And I know who's really to blame. The scariest part? The seeds of Nazi ideology weren't planted in the 1920s. They'd been growing in European soil for decades, even centuries. Hatred of Jewish people had caused violence across Europe for generations. Racist pseudoscience was taught in respected schools. Extreme nationalism had already dragged the world into one global war. Hitler didn't create any of this. He just harvested what others had planted. And that's what should terrify you. Because it means this could happen anywhere. It could happen anytime. All you need is a population that's suffering and scared. All you need is someone willing to offer simple solutions to complex problems. Someone willing to point at a group of people and say, they're the reason you're suffering. Not the economy, not history, not bad luck. Them. When you look at how Nazi ideology came to be, you're not just looking at history. You're looking at human nature. You're looking at what happens when fear meets desperation, meets hatred. And you're looking at a warning that we should never, ever forget. Subscribe.